Hey folks, welcome back to the channel and our Today in Tarkov, or TIT as the folks in the chat like to call it in the comments section, though I don't know how PG-13 that is. Doesn't really matter, YouTube doesn't seem to care, so TIT away. But on a more serious note, we've got some updates for patch 14.1.1. Not necessarily, I mean, you all know the patch happened if you've been playing Tarkov, but now that I've had a day or so with it, I can go through the stuff that mattered, the stuff they didn't talk about, some patches they've done since, and just kind of get you guys all up to speed. I'm bumping into my microphone here. Along with that, we have a really big day for Arena coming up, and I know some of you might not care about that, but hang with me. Even if you're not plugged into Arena, you're going to want to know what's going on just in case. So let's get into patch 14.1.1 and get you guys up to speed. Okay, so I have patch 14.1.1 up here, and I'll throw the link to this down in the description so you can click on it and see it yourself, as well as patch 14.1.0. And the reason is because 14.1.1 is essentially patch 14.1.0. It's just they rolled it back. Some of you might not know that back on February 11th, 12th, they did this patch, and then a day later they rolled it back because of some issues. This is essentially the same patch with a few small differences. And those differences are what I'm going to go over, or any big ticket items that we have more information on, since we got more than a day with the patch to go through it. So if you want to see everything, go check out my 14.1.0 video where I go through all of the line items and talk about everything in more great detail. Those that saw it already, don't put them through it again, but that way you're up to speed on everything in the patch notes. The first big one we'll talk about is the pistol and recoil change. So on the patch earlier this month, they adjusted the recoil parameters for pistol, shotguns, and the SKS. That is not in here. We don't have that. They didn't do it. Pistols still shoot like they always have. There is no nerf. There is no buff to the shotgun, which is what I saw it as, and then a nerf to the SKS. Those aren't in this patch. They cut that out. And probably because the community completely lost their shit over it, I imagine is why they didn't do that until they can work on it a little bit more, I guess. Next up is the armors were buffed. So on here, they list these armors: the HiCom Trooper, CPC, Cry Precision, the Baggerly, the M2, the Cry Precision AVS, the Cry Precision AVS Tagilla Edition, and Attack Tech. These were all increased from Class 2 Airmid to Class 3. That isn't listed in the patch notes, but it did happen. Now, the only ones this really matter on, to be honest with you, is the Baggerly, which I say Baggerly, everybody says there's no L in there, but whatever. It makes this a decent armor again. It's not the best plates in the game, but being Class 3 Airmid and having decent coverage, it's another rig that can be good to use now. The other one is the Trooper, which we all know about, the kind of USEC armor you start with, the HiCom Trooper. They did buff this to level 3. It's not great protection because it doesn't cover your sides, but it does have pretty good chest and back protection. Other than that, it's not terrible, but it is Class 3 now, which is kind of a big buff. It doesn't make this armor a great armor, but it does make it something that I will actually look at and maybe use now if I'm in raid and I don't have anything else to use. And then the other one is going to be the ANA Tactical M2. Again, another rig that has okay protection, because it does have side protection and full thorax protection and whatnot. It just doesn't have neck protection, but it did get buffed to level 3 Airmid as well. So you pop 5 plates in this, it's pretty good armor. It's not the best, but it's decent. So this is a relatively cheap armor, but now that it's Class 3 Airmid, it matters. Now the rest of the armors, they got 3, sure, it's great, but they have problems with their coverage specifically. I'll go to the Tac Tech and just point it out. I know I'm kind of rehashing this, but I just want to show folks. You see how this armor area says front plate and back plate? That means that it only covers the special hitbox that is the front plate and back plate, which means on your character, on the sides, you have no coverage. A rip round, a 9mm rip round will one hit you if it hits you in the thorax. And there is no side coverage, so it just has terrible coverage. So even though it's got Class 3 Airmid behind the plate now, these are just not good armors. It's almost pointless to wear them. So that's why I don't even bring them up. We won't get into a great bunch of detail with it. Now, on top of this, they also greatly increased how armor works overall. I have a video pretty much done. We got to get it through editing stuff, so it'll be a day or two. But we've got a video for this explaining how all of this is going to function to make more sense. I'll go through the notes here just real quick. They rework the damage through layers of armor. Now when each layer is penetrated, the bullet loses some penetration power and damage, depending on the characteristics of the penetrated armor. There were some bugs and maybe some unintended mechanics here. I'm not sure because they don't list it as a bug, but I'm pretty sure it was a bug. It's fixed. It's running properly now. They fixed an issue with missing blunt damage with hitting plate. So they make this sound like it was an issue. I don't know that blunt damage was ever intended. I guess it was. I don't know. There's blunt damage through plates now, which This isn't like a huge nerf to plates. A lot of people might freak out over this. It's not that much. We're talking like 1, 2, maybe as much as 5 points of damage, depending on the class of armor and the bullet that you get hit with and what air image you have behind it. Again, I'll get into these details in another video and explain all of this. Very, very minor debuff, but more importantly, you're going to get feedback on your end of raid screen now. Before today, if your plate ate a round and then you died, like let's say somebody 2-shot you, right? 1 shot in the chest, 1 shot in the head. The only thing you saw was the shot that hit your head because the plate didn't do any damage. So you ate a round, but you didn't see it on your death screen because none of that damage carried through your character because it was completely stopped. And sometimes that would happen like 5 or 6 rounds. So it's going to give you more feedback. You're going to be able to better understand what happened by your post raid screen. And it's not really that much of a debuff. I say debuff, not that much of a nerf to plates. And then this also applies to that blunt damage. Now decreases when there's soft armor behind the unpenetrated component. So if you have a plate on and you have airmid behind it, it decreases the blunt damage even further. The higher the level, the more this reduces. There's a lot of factors going in there. Again, we'll do another video. Also in that, we're going to discuss probably the biggest part of this patch. This is one of the most important notes in all of the patch. And it was with 14.1.0, but we didn't get a lot of time to really test it out. It got taken away. I wasn't sure if there was bugs involved or what, but they say they remove the possibility for bullets to pierce through a character's thorax and stomach. Now, this means no collaterals essentially, right? So you could shoot somebody in the chest with M61 and the round used to go through them. It doesn't go through anymore. It stops. Doesn't matter if they have armor on or not. It won't penetrate. The thing is, this also applies to the upper arms, so the top arm hitboxes and all of the head hitboxes, but it does not apply to the neck or the legs or the lower arms of your character. So this is the part that I'm not sure if this is intended or a bug because they didn't list it, but they didn't change it from last patch to this patch. And I did bring it up. I put it in a bug report and sent it over to them earlier this month with the first patch. It didn't get changed, so I don't know. And why this is such a big deal has to do with how arms are going to eat damage. I've got again, this is this big video that I'm working on. I've been working on it since yesterday. It's going to explain all of this in good detail and so you understand it. So make sure that if you want to see that, you hit the subscribe button and the like button for this video because it just helps me out, obviously, but it tells YouTube you want to see my content and YouTube will serve that to you when we do get the video done in the next day or two. But back to the updates. On the 26th, BSG added the feature that they were talking about where you were going to be able to buy additional stash lines. This has been added to the profile page on your Escape from Tarkov profile page down here, right next to the co-op mode that we already talked about in a previous video. But it's pretty straightforward. You click on here. It's in increments of 2, from 2 to 28 lines that you can buy. It looks like it's $1.50 a line. It's going to vary from country to country. Obviously, I'm US. You can purchase it as gifts for other people. You got to just make sure you're doing it in the right region. Confirm, go through that process, and it'll let you have those additional lines of stash space, which is not insignificant, but $1.50 a line is pretty much too steep for me, especially because according to Nikita, we're going to be able to get these lines through tasks eventually anyways. So that's probably what I'm going to do, just so I have a reason to do those tasks. Though if they're anything like the last one where I got 2 lines and it took me 40 hours or 50 hours to do the tasks, $1.50 doesn't sound too bad, I guess. But that's up to you. Now, in addition with this, today we got a bug patch fix again for fogs and haze on all locations. At the very bottom of 14.11, this was a new line from 14.1. I didn't bring it up yet because we're gonna talk about it here, but they fixed the algorithm of fog generation. It's density on locations. Well, we all assumed that mean that it was going to be better because those of us that played on the 12th, the first patch before they rolled it back, noticed that the fog was crazy bad. You couldn't see anywhere. It felt like I think Jesse described it as a forest fire had gone off. To me, it looked like somebody had mortared the area with like poison gas, yellow mustard grenades, whatever, or mortars, whatever you want to call it. But they did another fix today. It does look a little bit better. I haven't had a chance. I've been busy all day. I haven't had a chance to play today, so I'm going off of what I saw on other people's streams and what I've heard. It does look a little bit better, so keep an eye out for that. That is what the other patch today was to address that. Now for Arena, and even if you aren't interested, just give it a listen. Give me a chance here, because I'm going to do my best to convince you why this could be the time to give Arena a second chance, or a first chance if you haven't done that already. Now, I'm up front. I'm going to kind of come across sounding kind of salesmanship for Arena here. I'm not getting paid by BSG or anything like that. I just do believe in this game. I think it has the potential to be really good, and I don't want it to die. So I do want people to try to give it a chance and give it a fair shake. But it does need a ton of love. And that's for it to even be a fun game to play, let alone a title that can stand up in the competitive scene, which is a whole nother discussion. So let's get into the nitty gritty here of what I think is the biggest problems that Arena had with its initial beta launch in December, and why I think this patch is the first big step in addressing them and fixing them. Now, I don't think anybody's going to claim that the December launch went well. It was a shit show for so many different reasons. And to add to those problems, the game just wasn't there, in my opinion, at least not ready for an open beta. It just wasn't ready for the public scrutiny. Too much stuff was missing. And the matchmaking system, it was infantile at best. At worst, it was a system that had very little thought put into it. And this led to how players were matched, and it was the biggest failing of this whole thing, in my opinion. No consideration was given to your kit, your level, your skills, or half a dozen other things that should have been taken into consideration with how you were matched against other players. And honestly, I was told this stuff would be taken into consideration by several different people at work at BSG at TwitchCon last year when I was there, grilling them up and down about this. And because of that, I tend to give BSG the benefit of the doubt. For better or worse, you can judge me on that. That's my choice to make. But because of those conversations I had with the guys at TwitchCon, I think that the product and the system just wasn't ready yet. They were planning on getting there, but they had a deadline they wanted to get it out by, so they just shipped it incomplete. Now, these systems seem to be coming online finally, albeit only partially with this patch and with more down the road. Now, tonight is the patch, and from what we've seen so far, based on this infographic, really, are the systems that are going to come in that have me the most excited about it. The first is this preset tier system. So instead of before this, whenever you had your preset, I'll just go into them here. Scout kit, for example, that I went down, right? Once you started, you were kind of stuck. You couldn't switch to another tree because your ARP went up and you got matched against people that were running, I'm going to say like this is a tier 1 kit, tier 2, 3, tier 4, 5, so on and so forth. So your ARP puts you in like tier 6 and 7. So if you went and tried a marksman and started off with Owl or Chippy or, you went CQB or whatever, you still got matched against tier 6 and 7 kits, even though you had tier 1. That was a disaster. Now, a lot of other games have systems like this, but you match against tier 1 and your rank as well. But primarily, the first thing you do is you pick your kit before you go into a match. So you pick Merca, and then it matches you against people with other tier 1, maybe tier 2 kits, depending on how they set it up, that were near your rank. And yes, you need a bigger player population for this to work, but without this, people don't want to play the game because it gets boring very quickly. Now, this is my assumption. We haven't seen the patch notes yet. We don't know how it's going to work. That's how I think it's going to work, just based on what other games do. Games like World of Tanks and War Thunder and stuff. And it would just be crazy for BSG not to learn from what those guys have grinded through over the years and making their systems really good. Now, the next one is the preset redesign, system redesign. I'm not going to get a lot of details there because we just don't know. It's a rebalancing, I would guess, or just changing how the presets work. That is kind of a big deal for some of the kits that were either really broken one way or the other, especially with the introduction of the recoil system like halfway through and some of the other stuff that changed. Along with that, the next big one is, and maybe one of the biggest ones for some people, is this flexible preset unlock. Now, I don't know exactly what this means, but I read this in the context of instead of having direct lines of unlock on your presets, it's more open. So before, the way it worked is if you're on Marksman and you want to get to the Cracksman, you have to play the Chepushili class, and then Cracksman unlocks Climber, and then Climber unlocks Click. And if you had a class that had two that branched, like Echo branched off to Shade and Mosquito, it would unlock both of those at the same time, right? You didn't have to do each one. So there's a couple of ways they could go about this. Again, we'll just have to wait and see. The one is that everything in your Marksman, you have like Marksman XP, right? So if you play a Marksman class, it applies to all of these and just unlocks anything you want. So you can spend XP to unlock these that you could play Owl over and over again and then unlock, say, Chepushule maybe, and then Cracksman, and then Climber, and then Click, and never actually have to go down these other things. My guess was if you're going to do that, it's going to be slower, but that's one way they could go about it. The other would be is they could just be tree specific. Owl doesn't unlock anything down this tree, but you can play Chepushule and then Cracksman. But if you don't want to play Climber, you just keep playing Cracksman until you unlock enough XP to get Click. So that's another way they could do it. And there's many other mixes in here with things like free XP and stuff. Anybody who plays World of Tanks, again, I'm saying these other games, or War Thunder, know exactly what I'm talking about. But that's what I see coming, which is great for grindiness, because it gives you that, in combination with being able to play on tiers in your tier, means that you don't get stuck on any kit. If you want to switch over and play CQB, or you want to play Scout or Assault or whatever, you can do that and still have fair matches that are fun to play and not just getting your teeth kicked in. And these are the things that address what was the biggest gap that Arena had. That whole fact you were matched based on your rank, and that was it. Once you committed to a specific class tree, you were pretty much stuck if you wanted to be competitive, or you had to get carried by people. Because there is no way that you were going to go into a raid with like Stargazer and compete against the tier 6 CQB classes. It just wasn't going to happen unless you got lucky. Now, the big thing with this that is going to come out of here that we got to talk about is implementing all of this is going to require a wipe. Arena is going to wipe. And I know some folks are freaking out over this, but if you didn't expect this or you didn't see this coming, you either didn't pay much attention to anything going on in the whole area around Arena, or you've had your head stuck in the sand. For one, Nikita said this was going to happen. He said this back in January. He didn't say when, he just said it's going to be needed. And two, when you think about it, it was going to have to happen anyways. You can't restructure the preset system, the XP system, all of this stuff without resetting it back to the beginning. This is still a beta. Yes, BSG charged for it. Whatever. You can hem and haw about that all you want. Point is, it's still a beta. Things are going to change, and they're overhauling a bunch of these systems. And the only way to test them properly is to set everybody back to 0 and have them climb through them again to find the holes. So tonight, per what they said, ARP and progression will be wiped. Now, they said they're only resetting the preset leveling and players ARP, but I don't see how they don't reset the ruble values too. If you haven't been playing, they basically gave us 20 million rubles over the last couple of weeks with a couple of events. So I don't see how they don't reset that. They might not reset. I mean, like, if they don't reset your character skills, if you will, and maybe your stats, like, they might not reset these. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if they did, but I think there's a possibility of everything that this stuff can stay, because it doesn't really impact a lot of stuff. But we'll see. This might all get wiped too, just like it does with EFT. It's just no way to know until we see the patch notes tonight. Now, last, but certainly not least, BSG is going to be doing drops. Of course, they're going full in marketing. They've done this pretty much with Arena. This is going to be starting on the 29th at 8 a.m. Eastern, which that boils down to 1 p.m. GMT or UTC, depending on how you want to look at it, which is midnight, 12 midnight in Sydney, Australia, for everybody out there. This is going to be on every channel. It's going to run 24 hours a day. I'm not sure exactly how it's going to be set up, but there's not like specific streamers on a day. It's just everybody's going to have it, so you can watch whoever you want. The only thing you need to do is make sure you have your Twitch account linked up on your profile, which most people do it, but if you're wondering, you do it right here. You go into your profile, and there's just this thing right here where you got to link it and sign in and all that kind of stuff. And the way it works out is most streamers, when they're done, they're going to raid somebody else who's playing Arena, so that people that are AFK or whatever, they still get their drops, how all that works. And it should work unless they've changed the system, which they might have. I don't know. I'm going to play. If you're there, you'll get drops. I'll raid somebody else that's doing Arena that will raid somebody else, so that it works out. That's just how we've done it for years, as far as the streamer community is concerned. There is one interesting thing here, though, is that it sounds like they're going to be giving away trial keys. I don't know if those are in the drops or if there's some other process they're going to be doing it. So if you don't have the game, here's a chance for you to get one of those keys and have a chance to play it and spend without spending any money. If there are part of the drops and I'm getting them, I'll just do giveaways in the stream. I haven't totally figured out how we'll do it yet. We'll figure out something in the stream to give them away to people who don't have Arena, so that they can give it a whirl. But that's it. I'll be live tomorrow playing this. I'm going to grind through it as hard as I can, because I want to get a good feel for it, so I can give you guys good information on if they fixed it, if they've made progress, what the problems are, is it worth your time, all that kind of stuff. I'll try to figure that out as fast as I can to get you guys good information so that you can make the decisions on if you want to play it or not. Appreciate you guys watching the video. I think we'll wrap her up there. I hope it was helpful. I wish you the best of luck in your raids, and we'll see you in Tarkov.